Hey everyone, welcome to week 20, day 3. This is our ongoing one value week. And today we're going to start with a very, very light value. This is going to be our lightest value for the week. So again, the idea is to see how our brain can kind of piece everything together and reinterpret the way we understand form. So let's see how we do. Okay, let's get started. I thought it would be best that we can make a small recap of the last two paintings because I've always found that when we do exercises, and these exercises have been particularly hard for me because, like I said yesterday and the day before, they really go against my natural impulse to describe form. So I think it's kind of cool if I tell you guys where my mind is at and how the experiences from the last 2 days are helping me become a little more comfortable with the exercise we're doing, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard every time I sit down and try to do a painting. I think it was very eye-opening when I did the 4-color Zorn palette on Monday because I think that was a very quick way to make my brain understand that it had to redefine the color relationships that I thought were familiar to me. It actually made me understand that while I think I have kinship to that palette, I think I have closeness to that palette because I've used it for many, many, many years. And I think that it is almost like my fundamental palette. I had never seen it quite under this light. It's so funny when you think that you've done something so many times that you have no way to surprise yourself. And yet, if you arrange conditions that can push you in ways that you didn't expect to be pushed, your brain just has to make space for all these new things that you never knew were there. It is incredible to find spaces, to find new alternatives in things that were old and faithful. And that's what's been most amazing. Yesterday, I thought that because even though Monday's palette was something that I thought as being limited, I ended up breaking the color a bit too much because I want to do a kind of push and pull during this week where I'm investigating the limits of what I'm doing. So if I break form up into a bunch of hues, what is going to happen is the fact that there is a single value going to be enough to hold all those broken hues together, or do we need a sense of unity in the massive light, massive shadow when depicting form? And I felt I had to do that yesterday to give myself a chance to also explore the oneness of light and shadow, the oneness of what in my brain is still a lighter value and a darker value, and just translate that oneness into a specific hue. So for yesterday's painting, the convention of light was going to be understood as that green, and the convention of shadow was going to be understood as that kind of earthy orange. There is, yes, that blue background that kind of ties everything together, that just makes it almost like a 3-step painting. But I thought I needed that. I thought I needed to have that very simple denomination of what light is, what shade is, and just correspond those definitions to those colors. And it was an easier painting for me to digest. But like I said, I think the point of what I'm doing with this week is to see if my brain can make sense of different conventions. So I think that I found some sort of comfort. I'm not trying to avoid the exercise, but I think I found some sort of comfort with what I did yesterday, and I'm going to try to do that a little bit today. And I think that for tomorrow, I'm going to try to do something entirely different that I think is going to really take away my footing, but that's going to be for tomorrow. For today, we are going to echo a lot of the things that we did yesterday, which is we're going to find single big relationships to understand a darker mass and a lighter mass. I'm going to do air quotes on both of those things because, like we've said from the beginning of the week, there is no light, there is no dark. There is only the way we interpret those things. But in our final painting, there is not going to be a definition of light and a definition of dark. Our brain is going to say, okay, yeah, that was the darker mass and that was the lighter mass, or that color corresponds to light and that one corresponds to dark. But factualness of the painting, there is no such thing. There is only a very evident effort to reinterpret those things. And I think that that's what's really, really important. And that's the message that is being driven by doing this exercise. The fact that when we paint, we reinterpret what we see. I think we are in a losing battle if we think we can echo faithfully, we can mimic nature absolutely faithfully, and that is our role. I think that that is just an impossible task, and I think it would be an unnecessary task. What would the purpose of painting be to entirely mimic nature? Nature will always do a better job at presenting itself than painting would, so it doesn't make sense. What we are trying to do is we're trying to speak about how we as individuals understand nature and how we perceive it and how that perception can be enhanced through painting. So we're going to speak about the way we feel about nature. But our job is not really to just transcribe one-to-one what is out there. In art, we could do whatever we want, and if that is the path that we want to take, then I guess that's totally fine because those decisions are very personal. But in my case, I think that it would take such an amount of effort to try and do that, to quote unquote copy nature, that it just doesn't make sense. It's almost like a fight that we're bound to lose because we are microscopic in comparison. So I don't think we can understand ourselves in a sort of horizontal manner with nature. I think we should always, when approaching nature, when contemplating nature, it should really, really emphasize the fact that we are very, very minuscule. So for this particular painting that is going to be done in very, very light values, I thought it was important to do one thing. And initially I thought, well, I'm going to only speak about other paintings where I've found examples of images that are done in a very restricted light value. So my mind immediately went to very anecdotal paintings, particularly one of Franz Marc, where he has this painting of Siberian dogs. And it's very strange because it's not your typical Franz Marc, it's a very early Franz Marc. And I've always liked that painting. And I thought, okay, this is perfect. You know, it is very kind of on the nose because it speaks about snow and about how the value of snow and the light bouncing off the snow just envelops everything that's around it. And you will get these natural conditions where value is being restricted, specifically in the lighter value range. So I thought of that Franz Marc painting, and then my brain connected with like an Edwin Dickinson painting that is also like a winter landscape that we've mentioned before. And then I also thought, well, those two kind of coming together, the winter landscape and the Franz Marc with the cooler blues, reminded me of a Louise Dodd painting. And that's where I thought, okay, no, we don't really need to speak about just lighter paintings as if this was just a category in and of itself. No, I can actually speak about something that's quite broader and something that I feel is far, far more important. And it was wonderful that I thought about Louise Dodd because there's like a DNA that I think we painters share, even if we want it or not, but it's a DNA that connects us, that binds us with our history, with our painted history, which I find absolutely amazing when we can construct all these connections and all these ties with painters. Louise Dodd reminded me of Fairfield Porter, and there are obvious connections between the two of them, but let me see if I can present this in a cohesive way, and you'll see where I'm getting at. So Fairfield Porter is one of my favorite painters. He's an extraordinary painter. And he does something that I find just quite remarkable, which is, yes, he paints ordinary life, but it's an ordinary life that is presented to ourselves in a manner in which it doesn't quite fit. I always thought that there was a sense of uncomfort. So you tend to think that when a painter is willing to present something that's ordinary, something that's commonplace, that will always speak about the common nature of everything that surrounds us. There is nothing truly extraordinary about it. Everything just is. But in Porter's effort in presenting that sort of monotone life, I feel that there is a sense of detachment. There is always awkwardness to his paintings. And yes, it probably has to do with the way he arranges his shapes, which is absolute genius, but I always felt that it was off, that something was always off. Now, here comes the cool part. When I think of Louise Dodd and Fairfield Porter, I think of Susan Lichtman because I think she's like a perfect blend of these two painters. And I think in Susan Lichtman's work, she does this thing where she speaks about the traversing of the picture plane through these spaces that are affected by different lighting conditions. She uses light in just absolutely masterful ways, and she designs paths of light with the arrangement of her shapes. Now, there is something kind of off about her paintings because she does just incredible things with her perspective and design, and she just bends everything to fit the manner in which she presents to us her exteriors and interiors. But the most important thing about her paintings is that I feel that the universe that she is creating is almost one in which the parts have accepted the awkwardness. So the detachment that was present in Porter's paintings is gone, and in Susan Lichtman's paintings, and this is not something that is wrong, by the way. It's not like Fairfield Porter is wrong for doing something that's detached and Susan Lichtman finally figured it out because there is a sense of cohesiveness in the painting. No, I think that these two things work incredibly well by themselves. But I think that in Lichtman's paintings, as I was saying, the figures, the parts that compose the whole have accepted their awkward nature and have integrated and connected and have a sense of place. So every single element in her painting can be situated. It belongs to that place. And one of the aspects that I think helps us understand that there is that cohesive value to her paintings is tone, is the fact that because you have to traverse these lighter masses, let's call them masses, those spaces that can be interior spaces or that can be exterior spaces, that have to be traveled through a darker mass or that can be partially seen through a darker mass that kind of blocks them or interferes with them. Those spaces have a very specific set of rules that have to do with value. So if there is a space that is enveloped by a darker lighting condition, every single color decision has to answer to that value. And if there is a space that is being flooded by light, then every single color decision has to answer to that lighter value. The one thing that we're seeing in Susan Lichtman's paintings is that color has to coincide with the value that she has arranged in her composition. And that is super, super important because we then realize that, yes, obviously, shapes and composition in all of these painters, in Louise Dodd's paintings, in Fairfield Porter's paintings, in Susan Lichtman's paintings, those elements are of incredible importance. Their design is just absolutely masterful in all three cases. So that is something that is given. That is something that's fundamental about the way you present an image. But when thinking about how color is going to emphasize that design and it's going to echo and empower that design, then we realize that that color has to be faithful to that value. It has to answer to that value, and that is going to give it a sense of connectedness. And all these things that we're talking about here have to do with control. So, yes, there is a DNA that connects all these painters, but we have to realize that to communicate these ideas efficiently, we have to control our painting. And I think that these exercises that we're doing this week, while they kind of fry our brain in the sense that we are stepping into a territory that should make us feel uncomfortable, they also remind us that when we do paintings, we have to fully understand the extent of the possibilities and of the strength that we have in all these qualities that make up value and color, and that can translate those elements into form, into design, into space. If we are not aware of those things, then chances are that we're not using our tools to their full potential. And we're going to be missing dynamics that could help us communicate something more powerfully. So, even though we are speaking about the restraint that we have to commit to when doing these daily paintings and when we're being bound by these single values, we also have to understand those limitations as something that is ultimately going to help us to exercise control, to understand an aspect of our painting that can eventually turn into an incredibly expressive and powerful tool. I think that even though these can be sort of nightmarish, and like I said, I think tomorrow I'm gonna push a little bit more the conventions of light and shadow and how they have to coincide with color. Even though these days are tough, what we're gaining from them, what we're actually learning from them, is to emphasize an aspect of our painting that we always have to be conscious of. So today, as well as yesterday and the day before, we started to be almost hyper conscious. We started to be mindful and aware of what it means to really control the values of your painting, and how when we put all of this together in a single painting where there can be, saturation and contrast and areas of controlled value, we can really make incredibly strong images. So I hope you enjoyed today's painting. Like I said, I thought I was going to speak about lighter paintings as if they belong to a category in and of themselves, but this is not about putting paintings in separate compartments and understanding them as being detached from each other. No, there has to be a sense of wholeness when doing this exercise, and we have to reflect upon what it is that we're trying to gain. And today, I understood that what we're gaining, again, is just this heightened idea of control. So I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, where, like I said, we have a different starting value and where I'm going to try to do something a little bit different. So we'll see how that goes. Probably terribly, but we'll see. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.